This is gonna be the quickest point of my argument, but yeah, calling it right now, Carti is never dropping. You cannot convince me otherwise. Well, that aged poorly. So unless you've been living under a rock for the last 2 weeks, you probably know that Playboi Carti finally dropped his long-awaited third studio album, Music. And after sitting on it for a while, I'm not gonna lie, nearly every aspect of this record greatly upsets me. Like with my review of The Weeknd's Hurry Up Tomorrow, we're gonna start with a track-by-track analysis of the project, and then jump into some more of my miscellaneous complaints. Cover your ears, Carti Glazers. So beginning with track 1, Pop Out, we ironically enough start with probably my favorite track on the entire album. It feels like a level above the explosiveness of even the craziest tracks on Whole Lotta Red, and while I don't love Carti's delivery, it definitely works for what he's going for. We then get to Crush with the first of 4 Travis Scott features on this album, and I know people have been saying it a ton already, but it truly does feel like if Edging were a song. The production is really cool with the addition of the choir vocals, but like, just drop already, please! Track number 3, K-Pop, is just the ketamine snippet that we got a few months back that I already talked about in my last Carti video. No major changes as far as I know, so my thoughts really haven't changed. Again, love the instrumental, but Carti's goofy villager voice just doesn't mesh with it at all in my opinion. And getting to Evil Jordan, another single, I'll actually admit, the instrumental has grown on me a lot upon re-listening, but Carti's delivery still really does nothing for me. And oh my god, why on earth did they add this minute-long TikTok-ass build-up in the intro? It's so lame, it honestly kinda loops back around to being hilarious, especially with the stock gunshot effect they added in. Watch this, I'm gonna make a Playboi Carti song. We then get to Mojo Jojo, which features the first of 3 Kendrick Lamar features on Music. And don't worry, I'm gonna talk about his inclusion on this album a lot more later on, but even judging purely by his performance, I think this might be like his worst feature ever. He starts the song off with this very weirdly sensual intro where he's droning on about how he needs that new alien Carti and just like that Carti. It's very strange. And then for the rest of the song, he's literally just doing goofy Kendrick ad-libs, which, don't get me wrong, are kind of fun, but like, at least give us a verse here. Truthfully, the best thing that this track does is show that even Kendrick Lamar is capable of missing on occasion. Fortunately though, we actually approach a nice little run in the track list starting with Philly. Very nice instrumental that I believe samples an NBA Youngboy track, and Travis Scott's second feature is definitely the best of the 4. I will say, the track feels like way more of a Travis Scott song than a Playboi Carti song, but this album is already so all over the place sound-wise that it's not too jarring. Radar's another pretty nice track too. The half goofy, half hard beat by Metro Boomin is a lot of fun. Definitely don't love Carti's inflections on his verse, and this track also marks the official point in the album where I started to get really sick of Swamp Izzo's constant ad-libbing, but again, beat kinda carries. Then we get to easily another one of my favorite tracks with Rather Lie, featuring The Weeknd. I mean, leave it to Abel to elevate a track so much with a simple yet insanely catchy hook, like, I've been singing this shit all week. And unlike their last collaboration, Timeless, the instrumental on here sits in that perfect middle ground of their respective sounds. Filthy once again coming in clutch. Speaking of Carti, he's got probably my favorite vocal performance across the entire record here. Again, I just really prefer when he's in his more melodic bag, and I love when he does the quick switches from his regular voice to the deep voice in the second verse. And I already know what you're thinking. Yes, I am aware that this verse is more than likely AI, and yes, if that is the case, it would be unfathomably embarrassing for Carti's best moment on this record to not even be him. But after sitting on it for a while, I am gonna give Carti the benefit of the doubt here. Not because I don't believe that he would use AI in a song of his, I mean, let's be real, he's definitely lazy enough to, but more because I think it sets a very dangerous precedent for the future of all music criticism to claim AI when it's not been officially confirmed. I mean, we are very quickly approaching a point where people are gonna start accusing any song they don't like of being AI generated, and I'd personally rather not contribute to that. Don't worry though, I'm gonna go more in depth with the AI accusations a little bit later on. And while the next track, Fine Shit, has also been the target of AI claims, again, assuming it's not, it's another one of my favorite vocal performances from Carti on the album. The instrumental as well, while I would prefer the vocal chop be a little bit louder in the mix, is still super clean. Perfect track length too. We then get another top 3 track for me with Backdoor, and I'll be real, it's mainly just because of the backdoor refrain Carti hits us with in the chorus. Don't get me wrong, Kendrick and Jhené Aiko's singing breaks are nice enough, and like the previous track, I really do like this mix of heavy percussion and 808s with a nice vocal sample, but there's just something so incredibly addictive in the way Carti says backdoor, I don't even know how to describe it properly. Alright, and I'm also just noticing that we're only a third of the way through this track list, so I'm gonna try and speed things up slightly. Why the fuck is this album 30 tracks, man? Toxic is another one of my favorites with its hypnotic sort of droning sounding instrumental. Skepta's verse as well is super hard, and even though Carti sounds a lot like Future on here with the pitch down vocals, it works pretty well. Now Munyon is a track that feels like it's trying to be a lot more fun than it actually is, if that makes sense. There's definitely potential here, but my god is it mixed like absolute ass, and again, shut up, Swamp Izzo, please. Definitely marks the end of that little run that we had starting with Philly. Getting to Crank now, this is one I feel like I underrated a lot on first listen. You've still got the very annoying Swamp ad-libs, but they are a little toned down here, and it does still have a pretty catchy moment with the free throw hook. And then Charge Them Hoes a Fee is just an absolute mess, but I kinda messed with it. Future and Travis carry the track hard though, which I've definitely noticed is a big theme of this album. I don't think there's a single song on Music with a feature where Carti isn't the weakest link, come to think of it. I was actually thinking about this in comparison to Donda, another very feature-heavy album, but that record gets away with it much more simply because Kanye's just a much better curator than Carti, or was with Donda at least. Good Credit then gives us the last of Kendrick's features on Music, and of course it's definitely his best since we actually get a real verse here. And credit where credit is due here, but his verse did kinda convince me that there is weirdly enough some overlap between his music and Carti's. It also, of course, has the Carti My Evil Twin part, which, putting aside how bad of a look it is for Kendrick to say something like that, is very quotable. Go subscribe to my new gaming channel, by the way, if you want to see My Evil Twin. Then we have I See You Baby Boy, which is one I feel like I should like way more than I actually do. On paper, it has everything I usually love about Carti tracks, with bright, bubbly production and very catchy refrains from Carti, but I don't know, it just doesn't stick with me as much. Now with Wake Up Filthy, honestly the best thing this track does is immortalize Filthy's tag in song form. Another decent feature from Travis, and again the instrumental is pretty strong, but this track especially made me notice something I feel like really brings Carti's verses down all over this album. It just feels like he doesn't have any control over the beats he raps over. Like, a lot of the time he'll default to this flow where he just raps a single line and then lets the beat rock or fills the empty space with a Swamp Izzo ad-lib. And to me, I just prefer his more present performances, if that makes sense, like on Rather Lie, for example. Now, Jumpin' is a track that I feel like I like a lot more than the majority of people. I mean, it's definitely too short, but I think the hook is very much brought up by the chemistry Carti and Uzi display. I especially love the little lines Uzi sneaks in during the hook, and his verse is nice enough too. Of course, it's no Shuda, but it is still nice to hear Uzi not sound like absolute dog shit after Eternal at Take 2. And then we get to Trim, which is quite literally just a scrap song from Mixtape Pluto. You cannot convince me otherwise. And what's even crazier is that if it was just on that project, it'd be like top 3 easily. Future's flow on here has more energy than 80% of that mixtape. It's a shame it's mixed like ass, but still. It's also so funny hearing Carti's part directly after Future's, considering how similar they sound when he does the pitch down vocals. Also, I'm gonna say it again, Swamp Izzo, shut the fuck up. Please, it is so bad on here. There's like 50 ad-libs. I'm going to lose my fucking mind. Thankfully, after this, we get Cocaine Nose, which is another one of my favorites. While I don't love Carti's delivery yet again, the beat does more than enough to carry the entire track. That looping guitar lick is nuts. We Need All the Vibes is up next, and again, I'm fully convinced that this is just a scrapped Young Thug track that Carti ended up with. And don't get me wrong, I really do like his hook and verse on here, maybe my favorite feature behind The Weeknd, but I think it speaks more to the sheer laziness of Playboi Carti, that he's literally throwing on scrapped Thugger tracks on an album that took damn near 5 years to drop. Also, talking about Ty Dolla $ign's part for a second, I swear to God, ever since the Vultures incidents, his vocals have not been mixed right on a single track he's been on. It's so weird. Next up, though, we have Olympian, another absolute favorite for me, mainly because of the instrumental. Can we please get a Rage album that has this style of production across the entire thing? It's not even like Carti's performance is all that crazy, but the instrumental here is quite literally a perfect Rage beat to me. But man, is the contrast between Olympian and the next track Opium Baby so funny. This might be the worst Playboi Carti song I've ever heard. Holy shit. And to be fully honest, this track is so fucking nuts and all over the place that I almost kinda love it in a weird way, but objectively speaking, it sounds like an actual nightmare. You've got all the gunshots and the loud-ass 808s, and then Swamp Izzo's ad-libs being spammed so hard that they're literally cutting each other off, and then you have Carti's ridiculous inflections on top of it. It is legitimately one of the funniest things I've heard this decade. Moving on to what has to be another scrapped song from another artist, we've got Twin Trim with Uzi again. Or I shouldn't even say with Uzi, since Carti doesn't have a verse on this track, it's literally just Uzi. And fair play, his verse on here is really fun and very nostalgic, besides the opening line, my god. Again though, crazy idea, but why don't we make this track a little bit longer and then, you know, maybe add the lead artist of the album onto it, and then cut the annoying ass snare rolls while we're at it? Just a thought. Track number 25, Like Wheezy, officially marks the point in the album where I got really sick of the sheer slog of this thing. This one stands out especially with the mixing, because there's legitimately parts where the beat gets like noticeably louder all of a sudden. It is insanely jarring. You know, it's funny, people have been saying we've gotten mixtape Carti for this album, when, in my opinion, it's really more unmixtape Carti. And with Carti's verses now, it's almost kind of funny how the further into the album you get, the less of a shit he seems to give with each of his performances, to the point where now you can just really feel him fully phoning it in. This One Got It is another perfect example of this, I think. Although, to be fair, the pocket Carti hits in the hook is admittedly pretty catchy. Other than that, nothing too special. Almost done now, thank God. We've got Walk next up, and I honestly could not think of a better example of a throwaway track than this if I tried. Seriously, this song is so fucking boring that when I got into it on first listen, I couldn't even think of what to write down and just slowly zoned out until the song was over. We do get a little breather again with another single, Hood by Air, which is now just HBA. Like I said in my last video, it was one of my favorites of the singles, and my favorite of the singles that actually made the album, looking at you 2024. But of course, even this track couldn't escape those god-awful snare rolls. They don't ruin the track by any means, but their inclusion just seems so unnecessary. Overly is again another total non-starter where Carti just rips off Future. It also really got me thinking about how bad the sequencing of this album is too. Like, for a record with so many features, why make the last 6 tracks solo cuts? Especially when they're so obviously just throwaways meant to pad the album length. Not that this album even needs more length since it's already 30 fucking tracks. At this point, you're just begging people to stop listening early. And finally, we get South Atlanta Baby, which is definitely better than the last few slogs we've gotten, but still nowhere near a favorite of mine. Cool sampling the instrumental, but that's about it. And that's music for you. Look, I know by the end of this track-by-track breakdown, it sounded like I absolutely despise this project, but truthfully, I do think it's decent overall. Probably somewhere in like the 5 to 6 range for me. However, even with the music itself being pretty passable overall, there is a reason I titled this video what I did. To me, this album legitimately represents everything I hate about modern music trends, stan culture, and album discussions, to the point where even if I don't hate the music itself on the record, I still hate it for what it stands for. So let's get into what I mean by that. Okay, first up, I hinted at this a lot during my track-by-track analysis, but similar to Hurry Up Tomorrow, this album is just too fucking long. Unfortunately, music follows the continuing trend of albums getting longer and longer for the sake of stream farming, and like with all other records that do this, it makes it so much worse as an overall experience. And with this project specifically, it's especially disappointing since if you legit just cut this thing in half, you'd have a pretty good record on your hands. But because Playboi Carti seemingly only cares about making as much money as possible, this thing is jam-packed with obvious demos and throwaways. Like, I cannot stress how purely shameful it is to delay an album for damn near 5 years, only for it to come out feeling thrown together last minute. And please don't give me that bullshit saying, oh, it's meant to be listened to like a playlist. I absolutely hate that argument. Yes, I get that Carti was probably going for more of a mixtape vibe with this whole thing, but at the end of the day, it has been marketed as an album, and so I'm allowed to judge it as an album. And in my opinion, the way an album fits together as a cohesive body of work is an important aspect of it, and so I'm allowed to criticize when an album falters in that area, which music absolutely does. Maybe a bit of an unpopular opinion here, but I actually think Drake's marketing of More Life as a playlist is a pretty cool method that more artists should be employing. Because again, if music was officially marketed as a playlist or a mixtape, I would be way less critical that it has way too many songs and doesn't fit together at all. But of course, marketing the record as such would most likely result in less streams, ergo less money, which, as we established, seems to be all that Carti cares about. Anyways, on to point number 2, play the critical clip. Now this section of the video is definitely going to be the most speculative since we don't have any official answers and probably never will for if Carti used AI vocals on music. However, when you take a look at some of the evidence presented, his case isn't looking very good. Full disclaimer, I'm getting this information from a Reddit post from the user Turbulent Pride 1054, who compiled all of the current information we have regarding Carti's use of AI. So apologies if I get anything wrong here, I'm just going off of what's been documented. First off, there exists a song called Real Music that was leaked a while back and fully confirmed to feature an AI Carti filter over it. This was confirmed when a musician by the name of Lawson previewed a version of this track with his vocals on it pre-filter. And adding to this, it's already well known that Lawson isn't just some Playboi Carti fan, as he has a writing credit on Timeless, which, if you'll remember, is another track heavily speculated to use AI. He's also a confirmed associate of the OG Volta duo, which had production all across Carti's modern releases. So that right off the bat gives us concrete evidence that Carti has absolutely used AI in tracks before, or at the very least, someone in his close circle has. But obviously, having AI reference tracks is a very different thing than legitimately releasing music that features an AI filter, so again, let's take a closer look at Timeless. There's actually a leaked demo version of that song as well, featuring again vocals done by Lawson, though not only for Carti's verse but also The Weeknd's. However, when the official version of the track released, The Weeknd's verse was redone with real vocals, as opposed to Carti's, which are near identical to the leak. There's also been some claims I've seen that Carti isn't actually credited as a writer on Timeless, but there is some conflicting information there since he is credited on streaming services. Now, talking about the tracks on music that are under scrutiny, those being Rather Lie and Fine Shit, they both feature moments where Carti's voice has some noticeable glitchiness to it. Obviously, Carti's famous for his very unique delivery, often warping the correct pronunciation of words, but there are some fairly strong similarities to the overall crispiness of Carti's verses on these aforementioned tracks and the confirmed Lost in AI leak, or hell, even Kanye's use of recent AI vocals on Bully. Also worth noting that UMG has allegedly been taking down videos that attempt to prove the use of AI in these tracks, which doesn't bode well for my video. I guess if you're currently watching this, then I'm safe for now, but if not, I'll make sure to add a message letting you guys know what happened. So with all of this evidence, I'm gonna let you guys decide for yourself what to believe, and ultimately, I am gonna operate with the presumption of innocence until further proof comes out, but all I'll say is, I would not put it past someone like Playboi Carti to take the easy way out and use a fucking robot to do the work for him. And if it is confirmed that Carti used AI on music, it'll be yet another spin in the face to not only every single fan of his, but to music itself as an art form. I've definitely talked about my thoughts on the use of AI to replace the vocals of an artist already, but to clarify, I truly think it's one of the most anti-art things you can do. And so for there to even be allegations with strong evidence of AI use on music, that's just such a massive L, no other way to put it.
Carti my evil twin, Carti my evil twin.
So like I said, I do want to dive into Kendrick's decision to collaborate with Playboi Carti, even if this point has already been beaten to death by now. And yeah, my take isn't really all that different from the majority consensus. I think it's just pure hypocrisy, and shines really bad on Kendrick in not only his beef with Drake, but also this whole burn the industry down narrative that he's been trying to run with. I mean, the man has spent an entire year at this point painting Drake as a deadbeat misogynist, only to make music with and seemingly co-sign another deadbeat misogynist. And yes, I know he has the whole "I'm the biggest hypocrite" line in The Blacker the Berry, and one of the major themes of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is Kendrick being a flawed person. However, just because Kendrick seems to be self-aware about his bad decisions does not automatically justify them. And I can't believe I actually have to say this, but it's at a point where you'll see someone call Kendrick out for this, and all the replies will be parroting the exact same response of saying,
"Oh, well, you see, Kendrick actually is self-aware that he's a hypocrite, so you can't criticize him for it."
What? There's also the argument I've seen going around that because Kendrick has previously platformed problematic people like Kodak Black and Dr. Dre, that this is no different, but I still disagree. In Kodak's case, while I personally still don't agree with Kendrick's decision to put him on Mr. Morale, at the very least his inclusion there serves a thematic purpose. And with Dre, it's slightly more understandable why Kendrick would want to associate with him. After all, he was a massive influence to Kendrick during his early career, and Kendrick very clearly looks up to Dre. Not that that excuses it by any means, it just makes more sense from Kendrick's perspective. Compare that now to his link up with Carti, which just seems wholly unnecessary and only serves to make Kendrick look bad, especially with the direct cosign that comes with the Carti my evil twin line. Now I will say, there was someone on Reddit I saw the other day that made a pretty compelling argument in Kendrick's favor that I can see some of the validity in. They basically argued that Kendrick's approach here was one of short-term loss, long-term gain, claiming that with Carti and even Kodak to an extent, Kendrick wanted to link up with them to get into their good graces to hopefully set them on better paths in the future. So while co-signing these figures may shine poorly on Kendrick in the moment, ultimately his help in bettering them will be a net positive overall. And this idea definitely makes sense considering Kendrick's morals and upbringing. After all, he himself grew up surrounded by a lot of negative influences and most likely sees people like Kodak and Carti as more products of their environment and thus has more empathy for them. He even talks about stuff like this in tracks like Father Time and Mother I Sober. And I mean, yeah, I for sure see where they're coming from. It's certainly the strongest argument I've heard in favor of Kendrick's decision. But to me personally, I still think there's a better way to set these people on the right path than to essentially publicly endorse them. Especially with Carti, where Kendrick doesn't even hint that that's his intention. Ultimately, I think it's just a bad move for Kendrick, and I'll be honest, kinda makes me see him in a different light. I don't know, I guess I just figured that the guy chanting about women's rights a few years ago, actually cared about women's rights. But to be fair, at this point I really shouldn't expect most celebrities to be good people.
They saying I'm acting like Hitler, but how am I acting like...
I know we're kinda drifting from the main topic of the video now, but the success of music and Playboi Carti in general has frankly really depressed me. And it makes me despise stan culture and the lack of holding people accountable for their actions even more than I already do. I mean, come on guys, we literally have physical evidence of Carti being an abusive partner and complete deadbeat, and yet he currently has the #1 album in the country right now and is breaking records left and right. Surely in an ideal world, a person like this shouldn't be seeing a modicum of this sort of success, right? Not that this is a new issue obviously, but I think as I get older personally, I get more and more jaded towards the kind of people that idolize these celebrities. Look, I get it. I love music as an art form, especially my all-time favorite music, and it sucks when a musician whose work you're very personally attached to ends up being a horrible person. Hell, I used to legitimately call Kanye West my favorite artist of all time. I know the feeling. But I truly believe that it is our moral imperative to hold artists accountable for their bad behavior, no matter how much we like their art. Separate the art from the artist has always been a very interesting phrase to me, since it took a while for me to understand that it's not a universal rule. I can call out someone like Frank Ocean for kind of being a dick towards fans during the whole Coachella debacle and still consider Blonde to be one of my favorite albums of all time. I can still enjoy the work of artists like Billie Eilish, Chappell Roan, or hell, even Biba Doobie, even if they've said and done things I personally disagree with. I cannot in good conscience enjoy the work of a confirmed abuser and deadbeat, no matter how much I might like the music in a vacuum, in the same way I can't enjoy the music of a Nazi, or a sexual predator, or any other type of scumbag. And yes, I understand that there's a different line for everybody, but all I ask is, if you truly care about holding bad people accountable for their actions, don't support them, even if they make good art. In a world where us regular people have virtually no power compared to the celebrities we idolize, it's the least we could do to level the playing field a bit. Well, I certainly went pretty far off topic near the end there, but if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel with the bell rung to see new uploads from me on Saturdays and Wednesdays, unless I say otherwise in my community posts. Also, leave a comment, I guess, on how you felt about the album, or actually, you know what? If you guys could share some artists that you're big fans of that also spread good values, since I know there are some out there, I'd really appreciate it. In fact, I'll go first. Ethel Cain. I'm a massive fan of her work, and from everything I've seen, she advocates for a lot of good stuff, so props to her. Anyways, last thing, as always, if you'd like to support the channel further, you can now become a member and receive early access to all my videos, as well as a special shout out from me at the end of them, as you'll see on screen right now, with a special shout out to our newest members, HoopLol921 and Elliot Johnson 3. Join up if you're interested, it really does help me out a lot. But yeah, that's about it. I'm not covering Bully. Please don't ask.